Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Geek's Therapist, the talk show and podcast for Geek Therapeutics, where we take time to sit down with some of our awesome certified geek therapists and game masters and professional game masters and let them talk, and you get to know them outside of your cohort or outside of the cohort system. Um, I am Cornell Kritz here with Simone Arnold, one of our great Geek Therapeutics. Uh, hey, Joe, it's good to see you. And so we're going to jump right in. We are going to talk about what brings them to Geek Therapeutics, how they uh, came into the geek culture, and what real world applications they have found in the Geek Therapeutics system with their clients and with just in general how Geek Therapeutics has changed things or how they have applied Geek Therapeutics to their everyday life and practice. So, Simone, tell us about you. Who are you? Where can we find your stuff? What kind of games do you like? You know, what makes that geek slash nerd sense tingle for you?
Simone, I use they, them pronouns. Uh, Currently, I work as an adult outpatient therapist in Vermont at one of the local designated agencies, where I've been very fortunate that I have some wonderful supervisors who are super open to me experimenting and playing. So I've been able to bring some things in. Uh, a lot of what I bring in with my clients is gamifying,
Mm-hmm.
things that are maybe less fun for them, and making it more fun using different fandoms that they may be engaged in as a metaphor to help kind of like bridge that clinical gap so they can better understand different things going on. So often that might be like Pokemon has been like a really big one, or other animes and stuff, as a way of talking to my clients. Outside of work, my big things that I do, I play video games. A lot of them are RPG or simulation kind of games. I've put way too many hours, I think, into Stardew Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm super excited for Concerned Apes' next game, which will be coming out whenever it comes out. Huge fan of Legend of Zelda, so I'm super stoked for the sequel to Breath of the Wild coming out. You can't see it, but I have a Majora's Mask tattoo on my forearm,
That's awesome.
actually, and my earrings are also little Majora masks for today. A lot of
Well,
Pokemon as well, and all of that.
well, let's take a second then. Are you hoping that at the Game Awards we get an announcement for Breath of the Wild 2?
I absolutely am. That's what I really want more than anything. I am hoping that they're going to just say that it's coming out next year.
I hope
Like,
so
I
too.
trust that Nintendo's going to give us a good game, because they generally do give us good games.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really hopeful that it's going to be worth the wait.
I'm hoping for a title reveal at least. Finally get that name.
Ooh, that would be great. I also would be very happy with another beautiful trailer, because those, like,
Mm-hmm.
each one that's come out has been just like the first one when it came out. I think I like ran across my house like screaming to my partner and being like, "Oh my gosh, it's happening!"
I did too. I screamed. I got my kids, and my wife, and because my both my kids play and they love Legend of Zelda. Um, and to go forward with that, tell us about a game that matters to you, something that helped you through a rough time, gave you support, or stayed with you for whatever reason.
Oof. I am going to have to say, like, a big one that has been there for me when I'm really struggling is actually Stardew Valley. It's why I've
Mm-hmm.
put so many hours into it. Um, I joke with people that it's like the depression game for me, where I can like go in, I have a lot of control over this environment that's happening. I can explore, I can interact with people at my own leisure, which is really great when I feel overwhelmed just by the world around me and I need that bit of escapism, which Stardew Valley just like really hits time and time again. So it's definitely been great, especially when I was going through my grad program. I found myself like, all right, work's done. I'm just going to kind of like zone out here for a couple of hours, plant my crops, go fishing, give gifts to like Sebastian and stuff like that, and call it a good day.
That's excellent, and that's a unique game to hear about because it's not one that I've heard a lot about when doing uh um to hear about from a gaming perspective when I've interviewed uh developers and stuff like that. So it's great to hear this other side of that story. And well, you know, talking about geek culture and get and where we came from with geek culture, where did you get started as a geek? What was your catalyst?
I'm gonna say, because born in the '90s, I got to be there for the birth of Pokemon in the
Hmm.
United States. Um, Pokemon was probably my gateway into the geek culture. It's something that like when my parents wanted to motivate me to like work on something I was struggling with, they'd be like, "You can get a booster pack of Pokemon cards." Late nights just like playing, on the old Game Boy Color, with like a flashlight in your mouth so like you can see
Hmm.
everything going on before it's backlit, or like in the car trying to get those street lights and stuff. You know, that was definitely it was definitely Pokemon.
I I was an 80s kid, but I was still involved heavily during the start of the Pokemon era.
Hmm.
And I was lucky that not only did I have my portable Game Boy, I had a Super Game Boy that I plugged into my Super Nintendo. So I would get to play that way.
Hmm.
Um, and that was a lot of fun. Well, today, as an adult, or, as close to an adult any of us can be, I don't think any of us match up to the quote unquote definition of an adult, but because we're all kids at heart. What is what are your favorite geek cultural artifacts and activities to take part in?
I would say the big one in my life right now is tabletop RPGs. So like I play
Hmm.
a lot of Pathfinder. Um, I am a game master to an amazing group of individuals who uh, they welcomed me game mastering the first time, and it was such an amazing experience. A lot of respect at that table. We're able to explore some really deep topics, and so I just love it, as a game master and also as a player, just having that opportunity to have these really great stories, be creative, facilitate just really creative problem solving. I joke that like I'm at my best as a therapist when I'm playing,
Hmm.
Pathfinder or other tabletop RPGs like outside of the workspace.
And that's I miss tabletop. I can't wait till my kids are old enough to start really appreciating them and having the patience for them.
Mhm.
And to hear that passion for it is fantastic. Um, you know, as a professional, what brought you to Geek Therapeutics and why did you choose it as your training?
It came up for me. So I had the opportunity while working in a micro residential program with
Hmm.
kids to see a therapist who was trying to do that with one of the kids that we were working with. And I also had the opportunity to see what it was like to bring in these board games, to teach these boys how to play Magic the Gathering and stuff, and like work those things in. And I was like, this is amazing. This needs to be a thing that can be accessible to everyone. I
Hmm.
talked about it a lot in my grad program, and everyone's like, wow, that's like a really novel idea. I'm like, no, it's totally a thing. I know there has to be something out there for it.
Yeah.
And so I found Geek Therapeutics. It was also at a time where I was like in counseling myself. And I remember talking like endlessly about this cleric I was playing in my campaign and being like, I need you to understand why this character is so important right now. And realizing like, gosh, I really like wish there was someone across the couch from me who just understood that, and realizing like that really sunk home to me like how important it is to have geek informed therapists, because I think that counselor I was seeing, they were a great counselor, but I think they were really missing out on a wonderful opportunity to explore like what I was trying to share with them, and realizing that there's probably many other people who are having the same experience.
That's, I mean, that's an amazing way to hear about end the story. It's what I fell in love with about Geek Therapeutics when I was introduced to it is how different it is from every other approach to therapy. And to hear that from an actual professional in the field is heartwarming. Um, Give me 1 second. My headset beeped at me. I need to plug it in real quick. So
Yep.
give me just half a second. All right.
Hello.
There we go. Okay.
All right.
So what about the realm of geekdom makes it feel like home to you?
Hmm. It's a couple of different things. I think it is the passion that
Mm-hmm.
people have in various geek spheres. Uh, I don't think I've met a single geek who isn't at least passionate about something. And there's something about being in spaces with other passionate people who clearly care very deeply about something that is invigorating for me as a person and makes it really easy to connect with that person. Even if we don't necessarily share the same exact interest, I can go like, yes, this is something you care about. This is something we can connect and we can bond over is the fact that we're passionate about these geeky things. And so for me, that's what it does. And then there's also like the sense of community. Like there's nothing quite like the bond of like an adventuring party. Like our adventuring
Mm-hmm.
party maybe started out as a group of like eight strangers and is now a group of eight friends who would help someone if a family member passed away or if they were stuck at home and needed assistance. It's it becomes like a secondary family.
That family of choice. That's how I've always viewed it.
Yes.
And it's those bonds can be deeper and tighter than blood family, and it's amazing. It's a very unique thing that's very well, it's not unique to geekdom, but it's very prevalent in geekdom. Um, with your clients, how have you brought geek therapy into the fold?
A lot of it is taking something that clients are struggling with and using the language of something that they understand to
Mm-hmm.
help shift things. So, like having a client who's struggling with burnout and using the poison effect in Pokemon to describe what burnout is like and like how we
Mm-hmm.
need to use an antidote, otherwise our Pokemon faints. And if you're the Pokemon, you got to kind of do that. Or how we can then like combine that with like a paralyze effect as well, when there's like some indecision going on too. So it's really kind of fascinating how those like in-game mechanics can help someone like understand a concept that they were initially maybe a little resistant to exploring or really struggling to grasp in the same way. You can just see that like light click, which is amazing. Other ways, just like helping someone get to a point in a conversation just weren't comfortable having by going through something that they are really in love with and was meaningful to them.
That is amazing, and that is great to hear. To hear that being able to customize it based upon each individual client is it's what this is all about, and then it's what we've all come to appreciate about the system. Um, has there been a time where you've used geek culture during an intervention with a client?
An intervention with a client. I may need a bit more clarification. My brain is like going in
Um,
eight
well,
directions.
during an intervention with a client, have you used, a geek culture reference or a geek specific anime or story or comic or character for that matter to help
Mm.
relate and help bring them into focus during that intervention?
I have done some mindfulness with clients that's like geek based. So, for example, a client who's like really into Minecraft and was like struggling with like right traditional mindfulness exercises, but they really love Minecraft and the image of like going in and mining somewhere where there's no like creepers around or endermen or skeletons or anything. And they can just go in, collect some wonderful resources, and go back in that like routine for them. And like
Hmm.
they could just imagine that music in their head and what that's like was very relaxing and allowed them to center themselves at the beginning of a session.
I may have to do that for myself sometime because that really sounds applicable, just peaceful. Because the music for Minecraft is so ambient and peaceful that's amazing. That's a wonderful way to put it. So, folks, take that to heart. You're getting some good tips here. Um, how have you seen a benefit from your trainings with your clients?
I would say the biggest benefit I've seen is giving them permission to embrace their inner child. Like they often my clients when they start talking about this, they'll talk about how they've been told you can't like anime because children like anime or and I work with adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I know it's a little childish that I like playing like X video game. And my response is like that's not childish at all. And being able to reinforce the power of play as like a very healing part of their journey, that it's okay to enjoy those things. It's actually vitally important for their mental wellness to engage in play in some capacity, and that it's something to work towards accepting as a part of themselves.
And, you know, more people need to realize that about geek culture. It's not just for kids. No matter what it is, anime, video games,
Hmm.
uh, figurines, it's not just solely for children. Legos, it's not. It's important that it's for everybody. That's one thing to dive in because I'm more of the video game side that Nintendo did perfectly with the Wii when they came out with it.
Hmm.
It's let's play. It's not just for kids, it's for the whole family. And that was a smart thing. Yes, it was from a marketing standpoint, but you saw it actually being brought back and used through that clever marketing in a much more
Hmm.
beneficial way that they never expected.
The Wii was actually, by the way, the first console my family
Hmm.
ever got.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was, yeah. So I didn't have any console like home gaming systems growing up until that point. And I remember like my mom who'd been like completely against console systems the entire time, like really got into the Wii. And it was like a really fascinating transformation, so
Hmm.
absolutely the Wii was amazing for that.
That's fantastic. And my parents were the same way. They're like, oh, it's just a video game. And then I had them play Wii bowling, and they're like, this is really neat. They just weren't sitting there waggling their thumbs, as they used to say. They were actually up there throwing the ball, the tilt of the hand, everything worked in tandem. Anyways, what has been your favorite training so far to date?
Oh, they're all so good. um I have to say a lot of the ones that have to do with like the LGBTQI plus community, cultural diversity, like marginalization and
Hmm.
gaming and stuff like that. Um, as someone who's a part of, some of those communities, it's just amazing to see that representation, to grow more, myself in those areas and expand my knowledge and understanding. It's been amazing to share that with my players, as we like work on that and educating them. So it's I think those have been my absolute favorite ones.
That's great. And to tuck on the tail of that, what is your geek specialty to use with clients?
I would say currently, just because of the way I'm at my agency, a lot of it ends up revolving around like anime
Hmm.
and using anime in that way and pop culture, in a way. So like I don't know how many times I've used like the movie Inside Out as a
Hmm.
way of like helping the client better understand like emotions in their own internal world by using that movie as like a scaffolding for that conversation and process, because it's just wonderful for that.
Yeah.
um you know
No, and it is. It really is because it was much earlier than that. I first time I ever went to Disney World, they still had the ride Body Wars, and it was mind over matter was the main
Hmm.
message there. And that's my mom used that on me growing up. But Inside Out is beautiful for internalizing and kind of picturing how your body and your mind works on processing things, that you need not an abundance of just one emotion. You need a perfect balance of all these emotions, and it's okay to have all these emotions, which is
Hmm.
fantastic. um we were talking about anime. Top
Hmm.
three.
Top three. Oh, that's a
Sorry,
hard one.
I
Okay.
said no hard hitting questions, but this was a good one to just to jump into.
Okay. So I'm gonna say if we're doing like combined movies and TV, because like they're
Hmm.
in my mind they're like two separate
They
things. But if
are.
we're doing combined, I would say one of my top ones is 5 centimeters per second. Um, Paprika, and ooh, the other ones are so hard because I watch so many. And this is my
Hmm.
cat. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
it's no, you're it's fine. I love it. I love it. Beautiful
Ah,
tortoiseshell.
she is. Her name is Toph, like Toph Beifong.
Oh.
Um, um, the last one, because like there's so many between like all of the Miyazaki ones,
Hmm.
and then like so many, and I know I'm gonna forget something, and like 5 minutes later, I'll be like, no, it's this one. Um, My Love Story is gonna have to be the
Okay.
one for the last one. Yeah.
Great picks. I mean, they really are. There are a few of them I haven't seen, but I've heard of them.
Hmm.
Um, I'll answer in kind.
Hmm.
Sword Art, because it
Good one.
reminds me a lot of me and my missus when it came to us online and gaming together. I love Vampire Hunter D. I'm
Mm-hmm.
an old school. I love both of them, Bloodlines and the original. Um, and then more for a recent one that I've been enjoying, that we've enjoyed. Um, well, actually, it holds a special place for me. Is His and Her Circumstance, because I actually knew
Mm.
the English voice director for that one before he passed away. So that was a special one.
My partner just messaged me to remind me that I have a deep love of the anime Madoka Magica, and it's true. I do. I really love
Hmm.
Madoka
It
Magica. For her.
is dark, but no, there's I have some like that that are really dark, like Dies Irae. I liked that one
Oh yeah,
a lot. Um, which is
my
funny
partner.
to think about how much that song has
Hmm.
been used in scoring dark stuff throughout the history of cinema. Please, you're saying about your partner.
Yeah, he jokes that I have a very weird taste in anime. It goes from like really sad, like
Hmm.
very specifically stylized anime to like do you lift dumbbells? Which is
Hmm.
like if you've never watched that, is a very silly anime. So that's like the other extreme end of like my anime repertoire.
I'm kind of that way. The serious action animes or the serious dark, gritty animes to the slice of life. I'll fully admit harem comedies. You know,
Yeah.
all the way on the other end of the spectrum. But it just depends on what you need at that time. And it's
Yes.
amazing how much anime can be used to, if you reflect on it later, reflect your own emotional and mental state at the time,
Hmm.
because you identify and find the entertainment value in those, or you're using
Hmm.
that comedic and light side to bring you up out of somewhere.
Hmm.
It's really, really neat to see that.
Absolutely.
Um, with your clients, how has the training transformed your practice and how you work with them?
It's probably made me very experimental as a
Hmm.
person and willing to kind of like see where the boundaries are around like creativity in the therapeutic space and to invite a playfulness into the space, which I think can be really helpful at
Hmm.
times. I think it's also made it so that I can seem more human to my clients, which I think is really important in the therapeutic space, especially for this type of therapy that I do. Um, so that the person feels like they do get to see a bit of who I am, and it's less of talking to this the mirror reflecting back kind of mentality
Yeah.
that comes out of certain schools of psychoanalysis.
That's always been my hang up with going to see a specialist or someone, is feeling that it's just them, say, holding up that mirror instead of actually engaging with me. And that's what I'm really enjoying about this particular program, as as a layman, just watching you guys go through it and getting to know you guys as people, and not just, oh gosh, they're a therapist, oh gosh, they're a psychologist. It's very eye-opening from a layman's perspective.
It's really fascinating, the response when I tell people like that I'm a certified geek therapist, and their response is like, if my therapist would play video games with me, I would probably go to therapy for sure.
Hmm.
And like how accessible that makes, like, people who are like, I'm just talking to them fast, and they're like, that would be amazing. Or they have the same thing. They're like, it just seems so like weird and impersonal. If you did that, it would feel less like that.
Hmm. And given the perception of geek culture with video
Mhm.
games, anime, and the like, have you had any pushback from outside sources about using geek therapy?
Not since doing Geek Therapeutics, but I am acutely aware of that bias that exists in the mental health space. I had the unfortunate experience when I was in my grad program. We had this very interesting exercise that occurred where they had us one by one, without anyone seeing who wrote what, go in and write like our first responses to various things that have common stereotypes or prejudices that are associated with it. And the last one in the room was gamer.
Hmm.
And I go there and I go passionate, right? That's my first thought. I'm like, they're passionate. And I put it up there and I leave. We go back through after they flip them all over so we can see them. And it was heartbreaking, because every single one out of like the hundred and something people there was negative except for mine.
Oh,
It was
wow.
lazy. It was childish. It was unmotivated. And I had to have this moment where I had to, kind of stand in front of them and be like, I know gaming's probably not a big thing for many people here, but when I'm done, I'm going to be going upstairs and playing Pokemon.
Hmm.
Um, and I know many of you have come to me and said how much you respect my opinion and the work that we do. I don't think any of you think that I am lazy, childish, or unmotivated. I think it's really important to recognize that someone who's a gamer is not necessarily those things, and that those are just stereotypes. So I'm very acutely aware that in the mental health space, there is a bias against people who identify with many geeky things.
It is. There is a horrible bias about it, and one that needs to change, but it comes through experience and example, which everyone I've met with Geek Therapeutics is a beaming example of. And it's wonderful. It's great to see, and I'm honored to be able to shine the spotlight on you guys who are making this change, who are at the forefront of this, and it's an honor. And finally, tell us about your experience and journey with Geek Therapeutics, the Discord, the trainings, the community. How has it
Yeah.
been?
I love the Geek Therapeutics community and the Discord. It is a blessing to wake up to each day, or if I'm
Hmm.
having a hard day, seeing the jokes and the gifs and the memes and other professionals who understand my language. That's something that has been personally really challenging for me sometimes with other mental health professionals, is feeling the passion. And when I'm in that Discord server, I can see the passion not only for geek things, but the passion for the work that we do at the same time as mental health care professionals. And it is invigorating. It like bolsters up my spirit every day when I get to see that. Be reminded like I am a part of something that is so amazing and has so much like exponential potential. And I'm like very excited to be along for the ride.
And I'm right there with you. I really am. They have lit up my days and even been my soundboard or a quick little session worth, giving advice. It's just been a true blessing. Now we're going to do something a little bit separate here. I'm going to turn this way a little bit.
Mhm.
You, the audience, Do you have some questions you would like to ask Simone or myself? We are opening the floor to you for a little bit here. And to respond to uh, Dave the DM, that's a very interesting idea for a mock therapeutic session to show an example of Geek Therapeutics in action. I will bring it up in discussion in the future, but thank you for the idea. You've had a lot of love shown in chat from Vooz the Vagrant, Lauren Moorhead, Strands, Casavilla. They have shown you lots of love in the chat. But yeah, if anyone has questions for myself or Simone, we would love to have them. Now, let's get a little bit into Zelda because you can't see it at the background, but I actually have the encyclopedia. I have all three books, including Creating a Champion.
Ooh.
Um, Favorite Zelda game?
I mean, if it's not obvious by my earrings and the tattoo on my arm, and you can't see it, but there's a little statue of Skull
Mhm.
Kid over there, it's Majora's Mask.
Which is such an amazing mental health journey because of all the different things you get to experience in that game in those
Mm,
3 days. And
yes.
the way that it shows the process of grief and adaptation and all the
Hmm.
steps is really, really cool. And we have a question from Strands.
Hmm.
Uh, which is the best cohort? They're trying to put you on the spot here.
The answer is 17. Objectively, is 17.
Objectively is 17. That's who David DM is from. Is he's cohort 17 saying the best. Uh Map B board game saying the 3 days. Yep. um what was your very first Zelda game?
My very first one. So, the first time I played a Zelda game was actually at my uncle's house where they
Mm-hmm.
had, and it was Majora's Mask, but only having a couple of hours to play, you can't get too far in Majora's Mask. So technically, it was Majora's Mask. After that one, I didn't get another chance to play a Legend of Zelda game until we got the Wii, and it was Twilight Princess.
Gotcha.
And so that's probably my second favorite is Twilight Princess.
It's a great game. I actually plan on playing it again here soon. We have another question from Porthos. I hope I'm saying that right. Asking what style of therapy do you specialize in with your gaming?
So I use a very eclectic approach,
Mm-hmm.
but the big ones that I use are acceptance and commitment based therapy. So ACT, dialectical behavioral therapy or DBT, um, and relational cultural theory. So RCT. Um, for people who don't know, the big part of why I love ACT is just the use of metaphors, which I think lends itself really well to geek therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and the focus on creating psychological flexibility, which is something I see a lot of my clients struggle with. DBT, I really value the skills aspect, and being able to give clients like very concrete tools to use. And relational cultural theory, I really love it because it really focuses on social factors that are impacting the individual, along with not just like relationships, but also societal things. And as someone who really looks at empowerment and social justice issues and societal and cultural influences on the individual, that just really lends itself to the work that I do.
Um, During that, we also had Matt People Games said that you started with the two roughest Legend of Zelda games, and then Porthos and Casavilla both say that they love ACT and ACT/DBT with Geek Therapy. So
Hmm.
you definitely have supporters out there for that. Um, let's see, outside of Stardew Valley,
Hmm.
in your entire lifetime, what was the very first video game that inspired you? That kind of brought you into the fold for gaming?
Hmm. Oh, think about that one. Now, if we're talking about like recognizing like the power of gaming
Hmm.
and stuff, hmm, it's going to sound terrible. But it's really a lot of those simulation games for me. And that's because I'm someone who I think just gaming profile wise enjoys a heavy dose of escapism. And so it's stuff like Harvest Moon and
Hmm.
stuff like that, Stardew Valley, things like that. Um, that really highlighted for me like the power of like being able to just do those things and escape and like needing that space it really for me is what did it. Um, and things like a lot of the Legend of Zelda games in general, and like the overcoming like this big evil and stuff time and time again, and building up your competency throughout it is like another just big theme as well. I'm not necessarily someone who's great at combat. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I've always appreciated about the Legend of Zelda franchise is that you don't necessarily have to be the best at combat in order to progress in that game. What you do need to be good at is like noticing patterns and puzzles
Hmm.
and stuff and being observant and good at problem solving. And so that's also been great at developing those critical thinking skills.
That I have to agree, especially that even carries through to Breath of the Wild today,
Absolutely.
especially with Breath of the Wild, because there's so many different ways to solve those
Yes.
shrines that it's just mind blowing how different each person. I mean, you could almost do a personality test based upon how someone processes a shrine. Are they more logical? Are they more abstract? You could really
Hmm.
get something there. We have another question from Dave DM. Dave
Hmm.
the DM. Uh, with easy to learn games like family board games, examples of Monopoly, chess, etc., can a therapist bring that into their practice?
Absolutely. I would say. I mean, when I worked with kids, those are the games that I often used with
Mm-hmm.
kids. It's great for teaching distress tolerance and emotion regulation skills, for people who maybe struggle to regulate their emotions or need to learn how to tolerate maybe not always winning or needing to wait their turn. I personally really love cooperative games,
Mm-hmm.
if I can, just because it's really helpful for teaching things like communication skills. um, it's why I also love like video games like Overcooked,
Yep.
or Moving Out, which are like wonderful cooperative games. And you could probably just do couples counseling on those ones. And they're very family friendly.
Oh, there was that
Um,
game that just came out that was about a couple. Oh, what was it
yeah, there
called?
is one.
Yeah,
It's
it's
where
on
it's
the
like,
PlayStation 5. Yeah, you have to
yeah,
work together, but they're also a bickering couple in therapy. And
yeah.
it's sorry, I had to interrupt, but that just made me think of that.
Hmm.
That would be a great game for a couple to sit down and work on their communication skills together.
Absolutely.
Um, and then Porthos saying, spoken act, not ACT. Dr. Hayes will blow a gasket. And I'm learning all of
Absolutely.
this stuff thanks to you guys. I'm learning because I only had, Psych 1 and Psych 2 in my college courses. So
Hmm.
my knowledge of it is very limited. To be able to expand it uh, is fantastic. We have a question from Porthos again, like Gottman,
No,
Gottman.
I Gottman. I,
It's not ringing a
I'm
bell for
ter-
me either.
I'm also, if it's related to I'm terrible with names. Full disclosure, audience. I am terrible with names. I'm a themes person or big
Mm-hmm.
concepts kind of person. I will remember that for day, but if you need me to remember a name of someone, it's just like,
All right. Well, if we have, let's say we have Isaac Cringe, Link's Awakening on Game Boy, and Majora's Mask are the saddest Zeldas, which is true. They are very sad stories. But Link's Awakening also could be used in using dream interpretation for their.
mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I'm going off my uh just my mind spouting out those because that's the creative side of me coming out. So, regarding couples therapy for Godman was the clarification we got from Porthos.
Ah, couples. I don't specialize in couples therapy. I just know that having played some of those games myself, it is amazing to see what happens communication wise with people, how people attend to one another while playing that game, how people are able to kind of like regulate themselves when they get frustrated with something in that
Hmm.
game, and problem solve together collaboratively without ending up in the you did this, you did that kind of situation. It's
Yeah.
really amazing.
Okay. Let's see. Sound relationship house is what Gottman has developed for couples. Okay. So
I'll
there
have
we
to
go.
look
We
that
got,
up.
yeah, we'll have to look into that. Um, well, I got to thank you for being my first guest on the show. It's been a lot of fun. Um, oh, Dave, the DM, is asking, what would you recommend in regards to eye protection and rest cycle with too much of an online presence? Um,
For eye protection, um, I mean, one of the things I've seen a lot of people do is the glasses with the blue light
hmm.
filter on
Yep.
them. I don't personally have them. I think when I get my next pair, I'm going to look to get some of that on there for myself. But I've known many people personally who have done that. Um, just so that it takes a break off, makes it easier for them to fall asleep, so that there's maybe a little bit less of that melatonin disruption going on.
Actually, this is a great question. Sorry, Mikey, I am going to ask this question out loud because it's a great question. Um, do any of the besides yourself, they're curious in general if anyone in Geek Therapeutics supports ABA and what is the stance on ABA?
I am very familiar with the autism community's experience with ABA, and hearing that. I don't use ABA. I also work with many clients who are autistic,
Hmm.
both formally diagnosed and self diagnosed. And we definitely have really, at least I do have very clear conversations with them when we do use any form of like behavioral stuff like in DBT or ACT, because I think the informed consent around it's really important. Otherwise, it can become manipulation.
They can.
Um, in terms of ABA, I don't think Geek Therapeutics necessarily has made any clear stance one way or another. However, many of our providers are very supportive of people who are neurodiverse. And so we're very aware, I think, as a group of the conversation around that. I just can't speak to exactly what Geek
Yeah.
Therapeutics stance is.
And Kaze chimed in saying, I used ABA, but it was about 15 years ago, so I'm not sure
Hmm.
how much things have changed regarding it. And that's the problem with a lot of systems is that they don't, Dr. Shaw, is that they
Hmm.
don't adapt, they don't evolve. You have to constantly be looking at the new evidence and the new science.
Hmm.
Um, so, but it was a great question, and I appreciate getting it because it's really, really important to get these different perspectives on things and these different
Yeah.
voices. Um, but yeah, this has been a fantastic first episode. I've really enjoyed it. I'm glad I got to talk with you first. Um, you're welcome, Mikey. Mikey chimed in chat. ABA evolved, but is still abusive. Thank you for answering. And
Yeah.
it, and again, it that's it. We
Yeah.
need to learn how to adapt. Everybody in general,
Yeah.
not just
I,
as therapists and professionals, but just in general as human beings. We need to learn to adapt because we are evolving. And who's to
mhm.
say what we're seeing in autism and others special needs and stuff isn't that next step?
Yeah. A big part for me, just in the work that I do with my clients, is less of that power dynamic that has traditionally occurred. I don't go in there saying I'm the person who's here to fix your life in any way. It's a collaboration, it's a relationship, that works both ways. And so for me, that's why ABA isn't something that I necessarily implement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I do other stuff. I, as someone who's also worked in like a micro residential program, I've also seen how programs like that can be really really harmful and
Mhm.
traumatizing for kids. So I definitely hear where the autism community is coming from.
It's my concern right now because my daughter shows signs of ADHD and autism,
Yeah.
and she's not diagnosed. We're waiting on the county specialist to come in and assess her and see where they can go from that. And we've had some responses to this. So I'm going to read them out so you can
Hmm.
respond and so we can respond to it. Marble Girl saying it's so interesting because in schools we have a lot of parents seeking ABA even when it's not what they, I would recommend, speaking directly quoting,
Yeah.
for the student. And then strands those who don't know what it is. Could you explain ABA? We have Gen 2 Penguin saying this has been an amazing first episode. Look forward to more. Um, Casavilla, also interesting. A lot of insurances are now covering ABA services. So, do you mind taking a moment and explaining ABA for the audience?
Yeah. I'll explain it as best I can,
Mm-hmm.
remembering I'm not a specialist in ABA, but what it stands for is applied behavioral analysis. A big part of it is behavior correction. Um, the challenge for why it doesn't really work well for like kids and children who are neurodiverse or adults who are neurodiverse is someone else gets to decide what normal behavior is. And as many mental health professionals know, normal is highly subjective based off of cultural values and stuff. And so often ABA has been used as a way to correct autistic behaviors that would be very normal for someone with that um, neurodivergence to do. For example, stimming, which can include like flapping, repeating noises, rocking, what have you, and forcing them to stop it, often through sometimes very punitive measures, not always, but sometimes very punitive measures. And of course, we know that behaviors like that are actually very self soothing for that community. And so that's why it is so dangerous because, like any form of behavioral based therapy, if you do not have an understanding of the culture that your client is coming from and all those things and how to check your own biases at the door, you can do a lot of harm and engage in a form of medical gaslighting with those clients that can cause a lot of damage and mistrust.
Um, well, okay, we got a couple things here. Mikey seeing a little bit of their own personal story and experience.
Mm.
Is that their parents were advised to put Mikey in ABA to make them normal. It
Mhm.
gave lasting anxiety, really messed up the diagnosis because they had it. It was removed. It was diagnosed
Mhm.
again, etc. And that they were punished for being happy and showing happiness. And a friend of theirs had fabrics rubbed on them that made them feel like their skin was on fire. That
Mm.
there's been some really bad experiences. Um, yep, Geek Therapeutics is a town where combat is not allowed in a video game. We are a PvP free zone. Exactly, Dr.
Yes.
Shaw. I love that. Dave's a DM. Makes a statement of, knows that Geek Therapeutics has to make ends meet, but in what capacity, or Geek Therapeutics in general, and Geek Therapists, but in what capacity can you volunteer to serve the poor where the need might be the greatest? That's more of a question that as a operation we would have to answer, and I'm not at liberty to
Mhm.
answer that. I'm not Dr. Bean.
Mhm.
But as a geek therapist and as a person who's involved with Geek Therapeutics, I
Mhm.
help out as a member of the Real Ohio Ghostbusters. I go to major conventions and raise money for Shriners or uh what was it, we did one year where we make sure kids in the tri-state area of, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, and Illinois, four-state
Mhm.
area, gets Christmas presents every year.
Mm.
You can do those kind of things to get back to your community, or if you can volunteer sometime,
Mhm.
that's ways I can say it. Go volunteer at a shelter as a, do you need someone to talk to type, you know there's a lot of things that I feel can be done, but I'm not speaking
Absolutely.
officially for Geek Therapeutics or for our many, many geek
Mhm.
therapists. That's just my viewpoint on how you could help out.
Yep. Absolutely. And I work at a designated agency, which is a
Mm-hmm.
community mental health, and that does serve some of our most vulnerable due to poverty or any other number of factors. And so I feel really good about that because we serve someone regardless of their ability to pay. I know that when I end up in private practice, I want to be able to offer at least one or two pro bono slots. That's for me personally, and the option of sliding scale as well, so that people who don't have as much
Hmm.
can still access this type of counseling, and those who maybe are able to pay more can help support people at that end.
And that is fantastic, and I love hearing that. And I've had to use that at times. We were on one income, we went to doctors' offices that were on a sliding scale, and it was very, very useful. We I won't get on a podium. Yes, I'm for Medicare for all, but we just having something like that for right now is a blessing. Um, Booze the Vagrant said, "It's dangerous to go it alone. Here, take this mindfulness task." That's a great idea because that is,
Hmm.
ties into Zelda, and it's such a great inroad, and it's very applicable in many ways. But it is about time for us to wrap up the show. I want to thank everyone who contributed to the questions. It has been fantastic. Um, where can we find you on social media or anything like that if people want to follow you, Simone?
Probably the best place would actually be my TikTok channel at this point,
Mm-hmm.
which is called The Hero's Journey. I do a lot of content there talking about anime, Disney movies, other pop culture things, superheroes, what have you. um, Talking about some of the mental health themes in them, how they can be helpful. And I'm hoping to kind of like re up here with some new content. But that would be probably the best place to check me out at this point. And hopefully, as other things get pulled together, I'll be linking other socials there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Simone, for being a guest with me today and really expanding not only my viewpoint, but giving the world a viewpoint that doesn't get to be represented nearly enough. And for those watching, thank you for tuning in here at Geek Therapeutics. Um, and make sure you can follow Geek Therapeutics at Geek Therapeutics on all major platforms, on YouTube, here on Twitch, Facebook, maybe soon TikTok. We're working on that. And I am Cornell Kritz. And for those watching on my channel, go follow Geek Therapeutics, please. For those on Geek Therapeutics, if you want to check me out with other content that I make besides what I do here on Geek Therapeutics, I'm Midlife Crits on all platforms. So thank you so much. And to borrow a saying from a good friend of mine, who's an advocate for suicide prevention, remember, you're never alone, and you never will be. Good night, everybody.